And good Friday morning to you. Welcome to our Friday morning edition of Healthy Living South Mississippi. Live healthy, be healthy with Drs. Jim and Janine Fox of Doctors Nutrition on Cowan Road in Gulfport, just south of Pass Road. Today's show is not live. It was taped at an earlier date due to the fact that they had to get the studio ready for the St. Jude Telethon that's coming up this weekend. So be sure that you tune into that Sunday afternoon, and be sure you call in and help out with a wonderful cause.
Make sure you got a ticket.
Yeah.
Yes, for the house. Y'all get your ticket?
We have.
Yes.
We've already gotten ours. We do every year, so they always send me a letter like, you hadn't got your ticket yet.
I can't buy a ticket.
Yeah, you can't. So they have. We've already bought ours. So
you ready?
Well, we always do give
y'all
to
get
St.
that house.
Jude's.
You'd probably almost be my neighbors.
It's close.
It's close to where I live.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Won't you be my neighbor?
Yeah.
Today we're talking about MTHFR mutation. Have no idea what that is. Usually I try to do a little homework, find out what's going on. It's like, not really
that
sure.
one's a confusing one, though. It really is.
It is. But you said you had 4 people come in 1 week.
Yes.
That regarding that.
Well, it's something that actually up until 1994, they really didn't know much about it. It's a genetic thing, and as more is becoming known about genetics, we're finding these little mutations like and it's called a MTHFR, or methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase. And when we find out about these things, of course, now it's starting to get out and people are reading about it, and because it's linked to so many health problems, it's just unbelievable. And so people are saying, "Oh, do I have this? How do I find out?" And so that's where it's coming from. Yeah.
Wow. Well, so what are some of the health problems associated with MTHFR mutation?
Actually, you could almost say anything, but the biggies are like Alzheimer's.
Wow.
Yeah, cardiovascular
Depression.
disease. Depression is huge with
Depression.
this thing.
Well, one of the things that the mutation does, and kind of what it is you're lacking an enzyme if you have this mutation that actually adds a methyl group to folic acid. And if you can't do that process, it affects the whole methylation process in the body. Well, methylation is part of the detoxification pathways. Now, so that's kind of why it affects everything. One thing that we see, that we've been doing it for years, checking people for the genetic mutation, because when we do our lab work, if we do the extra cardiac test, the homocysteine, which we do have on our cardiac test, when it is a little elevated, sometimes that's a sign that you may have the mutation. Not always, but it is actually one of those things that makes us think that it's possible.
Right.
And we've gotten to where when we see all this high homocysteine, almost everybody we've checked does have the mutation. And
at least
so,
a single.
yes,
Yeah. Now
at
there's
least a
singles
single.
and doubles and
Right. And if you look, when you have the genes, and this gene specific, you get one from your mom and one from your dad. So you can have 1 mutation, or you can have 2 mutations. And there's even different types of mutations.
So if I have it, there's a chance that my daughter will have it.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's always, people always ask, and I always say, okay, if you have a double, your child has to have 1. Now, your child could possibly have 2 if the dad also has a mutation.
Okay.
So we're seeing it a lot, but depression is one of the things that probably is a lot of the research they've done with it is because of depression.
Okay.
And if you look, we've mentioned depression before.
Yeah.
I think something we saw last week, wasn't it 148 million people have depression at some time?
No, that's 148 million people being treated for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's half
not to mention the ones that don't have it.
Exactly.
Right, and they're not being treated.
Yeah.
The ones that are just crazy people. But the thing about it is, when you start looking at
Is that a medical terminology?
That's a medical terminology, right? Yeah, I don't want to. The 148 million people. That's almost half of our population is on some sort of medication. It's like, golly, that's.
And they do find that probably about half of the population probably has at least one of these mutations.
Right.
So is that what's causing it?
Okay. John from Gulfport, if I have the same MTHFR gene mutation as a relative, what is my homocysteine level significantly different?
It depends on which mutation you have.
Right.
Because a relative can have. Here's the thing, and even on on these various mutations, on the 677.
Yeah.
There's 34 variations of it.
Right.
Okay, so there's all sorts of variations of this thing.
To the same mutation.
To the same mutation. So that and that's the common variations. So your cousin could have something and have a totally different picture
Now,
from, say, you.
another reason why you would have a different homocysteine level, because your nutrient
right.
intake may be different.
Exactly.
And there are definitely things that you can do to you can still lower homocysteine if you have this mutation. That's why we wanted to get it out, is there's things you can do for it. I mean, it's not something that, okay, you have this gene and you can never do anything for it. Yes, your gene is what you have. You cannot change that. But you can actually lower your homocysteine effectively if you do the right things.
In other words, you can manage it.
Exactly, you can manage it. So your nutrient intake could be different than your relatives as well. And it depends on if you have one mutation. People with double mutations actually tend to be a little worse than people with single mutations.
Right. So there is something that you can do about it.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. You know, the thing that, I mean, there's, like you said, there's certain supplements that you have to take in a certain form. For instance, folic acid. And if you've got this mutation, you know, it's going to bring up some other issues about things. But, you know, when you look at folic acid, and you have to be able to methylate it. Notice if you take folic acid, you know, in your body, without it being methylated, your body can't use it. It just builds up. Just doesn't do anything. Well, it can actually do some stuff. It can actually be toxic to you if it gets too high. So you have to have a certain amount of this methylated form to actually prevent, like the neural tube defects in the pregnant moms, things like that. If you're taking in too much of it, too much of folic acid from sources, say for instance, foods that say fortified with folic acid. Okay, for one, if a food ever says it's fortified, don't eat it. But if it, you know, but if it's fortified with folic acid, really don't eat it.
Right.
Okay, because they're taking a synthetic folic acid, putting it in there, and if you happen to have that gene and you don't know it, you're actually doing you've got potential damage.
You're doing
right.
damage.
Wow.
You're not actually helping from the food being fortified.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's what, you know, one of the things they need to stop doing is probably fortifying it, with half of the population probably having this genetic mutation.
Some of the scientists, the researchers in this stuff, used to, they said, oh, about 20, maybe 40% of the population. Now they're looking and saying, oh gosh, it could be 70%, 60, 70% have at least a mutation of some sort. You know?
Wow, wow. Okay, this morning we're talking about MTHFR mutation. Now again, this program this morning was recorded at an earlier date to prepare for the St. Jude Telethon coming up this weekend here on WLOX. So we'll be right back with more from Live Healthy, Be Healthy, and Doctor's Nutrition. And welcome back to our Friday morning edition of Healthy Living South Mississippi. Live Healthy, Be Healthy with Dr. Jim and Janine Fox of Doctor's Nutrition on Cowan Road, Gulfport, located just south of Pass Road. Again, this program was pre-recorded at an earlier date as the station prepares for our yearly St. Jude Telethon coming up on Sunday on WLOX. We're talking about MTHFR mutation, which it's a gene mutation that can cause all kinds of different situations in you.
It can.
And it may be different what it does to me as what it would do to you or you.
Exactly.
Another group of people that we have found a lot of times when we test them, they have it, is the people with the fibromyalgia.
Okay.
So you hear of the people with the fibromyalgia and chronic pain syndromes.
Chronic fatigue.
If you can't detoxify properly and can't methylate, then these problems can be there also. Like I said, it can be anywhere from heart disease to memory loss to chronic pain to, there's so many things that can be affected.
Does it affect men and women differently?
Well, I mean, you know, obviously anything affects men and women a little bit differently.
Well, yeah,
but because of the hormones and so on.
Do men have a higher
No.
Get a depression? No.
You know, probably just from what we've seen, and it's not what the research shows. I'm just going by what we see.
Right.
I do see women probably have more symptoms from it, but I don't know if that's just
you
because
know,
they tell you more about it.
A lot of that's true.
You know?
We can be hard-headed, can't
Yeah,
we?
we can. I was going to say men tend to just not do too much with it, you know. But you know, when you've got somebody that men especially, they might ignore it and just kind of go along with it, you know, work your way through it. But women will say, "Hey, something's wrong."
Yeah.
So
men ignore things until it gets really bad.
Haley from Pass Christian, does
Heterozygous.
heterozygous MTHFR gene mutation cause pregnancy complications?
Oh yeah.
It
Yeah,
can.
it can. I mean, that's a biggie because it can.
And actually, of course, the heterozygous is not as bad as the homozygous, but there is
Well, it
still,
can
they
be.
found that it can all cause pregnancy problems, and they actually know that it can cause fertility issues, and
Yeah.
definitely you want to make sure our prenatal vitamins that we use, actually most vitamins, and even the vitamins that we have that don't have this so far, we're switching them right now. We're reformulating our other multis. Everything's going to be reformulated to contain the type of folic acid that everybody can use. We're finding out it's such a huge percentage of the population that all these people are taking these prenatal vitamins with high amounts of folic acid, and if they're if they have that gene mutation, they can't utilize it.
We might have to do a show on that sometime, prenatal care.
Yeah, actually,
That's
yeah.
a proper thing.
Because prenatal care does make a difference. That's a good one.
Write that down.
So,
a good one.
yes,
So,
it can cause pregnancy complications.
You know, and one of the things that we see a lot of times with somebody like that, you know, they'll do their folic acid.
Right.
And if you've not been supplementing with folic acid and you see a very high folic acid content, like greater than 23 or something like that, you need to have this test, this MTHFR test, to see what kind of mutations you have. Because if you can't use it, it builds up.
Right.
And that's where those fortified foods come in, because it's something you can't use, tends to build up and it actually even become toxic in you. So yeah, if somebody that's thinking about pregnancy, you know, gosh, nowadays, knowing what we know about it and so on, it's worthwhile to get it checked and then make real sure that you're taking the specific kind of folic acid. It's called 5-MTHF, 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate.
Okay.
MTHF's a lot easier to say, isn't it? Yeah.
When you started to say 5, I thought you were going to go to the 5-HTP again.
Well, but you know, it really
Start with the
interesting.
5, though.
It can actually have an effect on that, which is the serotonin.
Which that is why it affects depression. When you start looking,
Yeah.
if you can't methylate your folate, that plays a part in all your other brain chemicals.
Like your neurotransmitter, you know, your dopamine, your serotonin,
Your serotonin, the norepinephrine, all that is affected by the methylation process.
Those catecholamines, you know.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Which is one thing that we see probably make the biggest difference
Right.
in actually when people start taking it that they have the mutation is the depression. They're like, oh my God, that cloud is lifted. Or I can think straight. I hear that a lot.
They always talk about, she mentioned that cloud, and that's literally what they'll tell you.
That's what they say.
They like it's like a cloud lifted.
Yeah.
And like, okay.
Wow.
I had somebody just yesterday that said that. That's why I was like, she was like, I had that clouds lifted.
Because we went over
okay.
like 4 of them, I think, in the last week. And another one that I had, she said, she said, I just can't thank you enough because that cloud is lifted. I'm thinking, okay.
And like I said, there's a few that we've done
Lift
that
the cloud.
Lift the cloud.
So we've done quite a few of them lately because people do want to know, is that what's causing my problem?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Brandon from Pascagoula, how do I know if I have the MTHFR mutant gene?
It's a blood test.
Yeah.
It's
That's
simple blood
going
test.
to be one of my questions. Is I guess it's part of one of your panels that you do.
No.
It's an add-on. No, it's
a
very
specific test.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, in our panels, we mentioned the homocysteine.
Right.
And if you have high homocysteine, you should always have it checked because it could or could not be, it may or may not be the reason why your homocysteine is elevated.
But if you're having any of those other health issues, you know, for instance, Brandon, and I'm not sure about your family history, but say, look, for instance, you got a lot of cardiovascular history in your family. You know, mom, dad, grandpa, whatever, died very young of a heart attack or stroke or whatever. You want to have it checked because there is a red flag flying over there saying, hey, there's a problem brewing here. And, you know, we don't want to just, you know, it's not just your cholesterol. You get into these things like the 5-MTHF or the MTHFR mutation, those things gives you the more information so you can actually do something about fixing it and preventing it. Yeah.
But yeah, but the test is something that we do a lot, and it's just a genetic test.
I think it's like $110.
Yeah.
Be the best $110 you ever spent.
Yeah,
really.
so it's not cheap, but it's not ridiculous. So, but genetic testing is a little bit more expensive than some of the other testing, but it is something that you can check and then know.
Actually, when we first started doing the test, which is probably about 7-8 years ago, the test was a lot more expensive.
Like
it was like $300 or $400.
Wow.
And we've actually got it down.
We've got it down some over time because, of course, the more we order it, they give us a better price. But it is something that you can have checked.
Yeah, sure can.
No, definitely. I mean, especially, you know, with all this that it has to deal with. And matter of fact, when we come back, we're going to find out how it does cause depression and how it affects you and everything. This is actually, our show this morning was recorded at an earlier date as this weekend. They actually had to get take all this down and get the studio ready for the St. Jude Telethon. That'll be this Sunday on WLOX ABC, as the Masters will be on WLOX CBS Sunday afternoon. So both stations got a great day for you on Sunday afternoon. So we will be back the following week live, and we'll let you know later on what that subject's going to be about. But again, we appreciate you bearing with us here today. We are having our previously recorded edition of Healthy Living South Mississippi. Live healthy, be healthy. And we're back with our final segment here on our previously recorded edition of Healthy Living South Mississippi. Live healthy, be healthy with Drs. Jim and Janine Fox of Doctors Nutrition. We'll be back live next week.
Yes.
Next week we're going to be talking about hypertension.
Yes.
High blood pressure. Everybody, well, just about everybody has it.
There's a very common
Which is
one,
another
right.
common problem. So there'll be
Exactly.
that'll affect a lot of people. So we will talk about that next week.
But we're still talking about MTHFR mutation.
Yes.
How does it cause depression?
Well, it interferes with, because when you get into this methylation thing, it affects more than just folic acid. But in one of the things that it does is you have to have a certain kind of folic acid is very important for the nerves and the nervous system. And if it's not a methylated form, you can't properly utilize serotonin and dopamine and epinephrine and norepinephrine, and you kind of mess them up. You're going to have depression.
Yeah.
Your body can't function because it doesn't have the chemistry.
Because I
that
do
it
know
needs
that
to.
depression is a brain chemistry problem most of the time.
Right.
And I mean, situational depression may be a little different, but we're talking about people that just get depression for no reason. And a lot of times it's because they can't methylate.
Right.
Do you find that we are seeing more problems? I don't know what you said something to maybe years ago. I'm talking 100 years ago or whatever. We didn't have all this stuff that we had to deal with because I guess we got a lot of the natural nutrients that we needed out of.
Yes.
They didn't fortify food.
Exactly.
You went out in the backyard and chopped its head off or whatever.
Or hunted it in the woods
right.
or grew it.
Exactly.
Grew it out in your garden.
I do think the fortification has made the problem worse because they do know that it actually worsens you if you take too much of a folic acid that's not methylated if you have this problem.
Yeah.
And like I said, many people do have it.
Wow.
And when you start looking at the percentage of people that have it, no wonders we're seeing all these problems. And it's not just one problem. If it were just one thing, it would be, you could kind of home in on it. But it's so broad, and every, as the research has unfolded since about '94, and it started about '88, but about '94 they had developed the techniques to say, okay, we can actually do the test to see what this is. And the more we've learned about it since then, and especially since about 2004 when everything became totally commercially available for it, wow, it's just opened up our eyes because we said, oh, wait a minute, what about this cardiovascular stuff? Well, what about this depression?
Yeah.
What about, every time they ask a question and then go look at this group of people, hobby darn.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how many people out there are taking a multivitamin that has regular folic acid, but yet
Or
they can't
synthetic
utilize
folic
it?
acid, right.
Yeah. And so look at your multi. I mean, we do have quite a few at the store that have the methylated form, which is actually the 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate.
Right.
And speaking of that kind of folic acid, that is actually one of the treatments if you do have this gene mutation. Now, you're never going to change your genes. That is your genes. I mean, we can't change it, but what we can do is help you methylate. And methylation, like I said, if you take the right kind of folic acid, you can still methylate.
Yeah.
And another really important nutrient that your own body produces, it's actually one of its biggest antioxidants that it makes itself, is called glutathione. You have to have methylation to produce glutathione. So that's another reason it causes problems, is because without the glutathione, you have all kind of damage to cells. Your glutathione, your body makes it to protect your cells, and you can't make it properly if you don't have the right type of folic acid. Now, they also do recommend people with this mutation maybe taking a liposomal form of the glutathione to make sure they're getting enough. And then we've mentioned DMG on our other shows, which is actually dimethylglycine. It is a methylator.
Yeah.
So, there are other things you can do for methylation. So the thing is lab work to see if you have it. And look at your multi. Don't take things that have the regular form of folic acid in it.
Yeah, if it just says folic acid or folinic acid, don't do it.
Yeah, and we have some multis that still have that form, but like I said, we're in the middle of trying to reformulate them all to change them because it's getting to be, there's so much research coming out about this problem.
Yeah.
And most people don't know about it. I've had many people say that their doctors didn't know about it. And so that's why we wanted to do a show on it, because it's like, this is something that people really don't know about.
Well, I'd never heard of it.
Yeah,
I'd never heard of
don't
it.
know about
When you tell me this is what we talk about, and it's like, huh?
That's
Totally. Yeah.
But see, now you know.
Now you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's absolutely amazing. Yeah. And again, and you mentioned taking multivitamins. People do try to do that. don't go to your big box stores and just buy a bunch of vitamins. I mean, because a lot of time, I mean, and this is, even ABC News has done a story on this.
Yes, they
Yes.
did.
Of all the fillers and everything that are in these multivitamins, and a lot of them, different,
Don't
not
even
only the
have in it,
multivitamins,
yeah.
don't even have the stuff in it that they're talking about.
Yeah.
Or it's so minuscule that no wonder you're getting it for $2.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Something like that.
One of our big sellers is what's what we call Megavites 1.
Right here, take that.
Because
I take that.
it's a 1-a-day formula, and we concentrated on the things that we know you need, like the 5-MTHF. That's the kind of
That
folic
is in
acid
there.
that's in there.
Okay.
It's got a methylated B12. It's got some CoQ10. So it's got the right kind of nutrients
Right.
to help you with this methylation issue all the way around. So
Right,
you
because
know,
even the B12 that you
Yeah.
take, cyanocobalamin, which is your most common form of B12, is not the kind that you need if you have this mutation. You actually need methylcobalamin. So again, now
Right.
we don't have anything, I don't think, in our whole store that has cyanocobalamin in it anymore. That's
No.
actually an outdated form of B12.
it's a very old, outdated.
but
you know,
it's
and
still
every-
in a lot of things that you see.
But you
Yeah.
know what? That's why everybody tells you, oh, you've got to take B12 as a sublingual. Nah, you don't.
You used to with
Used
the-
to, you
with
did.
the
If it's
cyanocobalamin.
cyanocobalamin, you
Yeah.
had to.
Right.
You can't absorb it. A lot of people couldn't absorb it. They called it an intrinsic factor. We didn't know what it was. Now we know, okay, we're getting down to this methylation thing again. And so the more we've learned about it, but now, like I said, in our store, in all our formulations, everything, years ago, we went to the methyl form because you could absorb it and could utilize it. Back then, didn't even know why. But now we know why. It's because of this mutant gene.
We probably need to talk about our specials this week, too.
Yeah, we do. We got
Yes,
some.
we do have a
Yeah.
couple specials, and one of them is called methyl CPG, which it is the methylated form of folic acid with the methylated B12 and a little B6 and betaine. So it actually is put together to lower homocysteine, but it's also a good methylator.
Right.
And then the DMG, which we've mentioned actually is a really good methylator, and we talked about it last week on our exercise program.
Right.
Exactly.
So DMG and methyl CPG are our 25% off this week.
All right, that's good through Thursday. So you can stop by and get that from them. Remember, the doctors are there every Monday through Thursday at Doctor's Nutrition, located on Cowan Road in Gulfport, just south of Pass Road. If you have any questions, they're there from 10 to 5, Monday through Thursday. Of course, the store is open 6 days a week, Friday and Saturdays. They've still got a great staff of people in there. Be glad to help you out. And any of them definitely can. And for those of you who are kind of out of the viewing area, well, not out of the viewing area, but out of the area from maybe driving down here, you can call them up if you
Yeah,
have questions.
call us.
Please
Yeah.
feel free to call them up. 897-0070 is the number to call. And also, you see the website there, doctorsnutrition.com. So
Exactly.
next week, we'll be back live.
Yep.
And
Hypertension.
that's right. Hypertension, high blood pressure, which there's no telling how many percentage of Americans.
Oh, it's
A lot.
huge. It's huge.
I'm one of those.
Especially over a certain age.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and a lot of it may have to do with lifestyles and things like that.
Right.
And some of it may just be you got it from dear old mom or dear old dad. So anyway,
Genetics.
Genetics. Yep, there you go.
Genetics.
Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week.